Welcome to Primal Defense Combat Systema. I'm Andrew Grapsis, Certified Combat System Instructor under Kevin Sikoris. Today we're going to be doing another basic exercise in breath work. We're going to be focusing on held inhale and exhale. That means we're going to be breathing in to a certain percentage of our capacity, holding, breathing out, allowing at least a little bit of the breath to remain, and then holding as well, before repeating the cycle. Now the question becomes, why do we care about practicing our held breath and our empty breath? First off, held breath is a natural reaction to a lot of stimuli in our environment. We are engineered to hold the breath at a sudden moment. Part of this can be our natural neurological freeze response, which is one of the short circuits that occurs when we sense a threat in our environment. Other aspects might just simply be a tightening of the muscles. Even in a fight response, we tend to have a tightening of the muscles that occurs. Regardless of what exactly the trigger is, we often have a held breath during a sudden, unexpected event. In order for us to be able to learn to work with this held breath, to release it, to be able to work through it, to be able to change our neurological state as it relates to our environment, we need to be able to identify when we're holding our breath. The best way to learn to identify held breath is to practice the held breath. We also want to practice the empty breath because it happens. In a fight, you might suddenly have run entirely out of breath. You might be running almost exclusively on what little you can inhale as you're fighting. Additionally, you never know in a fight when your breath is going to be interrupted by a strike that just locks up your muscles, by a sudden event, or by actual breath deprivation. As such, we want to learn to take the panic away from the sensation of the empty breath, knowing that we can operate while we breathe, even with our lungs relatively empty. For many, the sensation of full, absolutely full lungs is painful or disconcerting. The sensation of fully empty lungs is equally uncomfortable. This practice's main goal is to get us comfortable with these two feelings and allow us to identify when we have full lungs or empty lungs. The reason we're going to practice within some range instead of our maximum capacity, about 70% or 80% full, and about 10 to 20% on the empty side, is so that we avoid a panic response. The goal right now is not to escalate ourselves, but to get comfortable within that comfort zone of range so that we can begin expanding it over time to the absolute full and the absolute empty. So go ahead and find a comfortable place, preferably quiet, somewhere you can be upright, reclined, eyes open, eyes closed, and just feel a little bit at peace in the space. Once you've found the place that you consider to be comfortable for your practice, we'll begin by inhaling and filling the lungs fully through the nose to about 80%. If you feel more comfortable, keep going. The way this should feel is you should breathe in, feel that fullness in your lungs, and it should be at a point where you don't feel like you're straining your chest, where you don't feel like your lungs are overly stretching. We want to just begin to feel that real stretch of fullness in the lungs and not move past that. If you move past that, it's no big deal. You can let out a little breath. You can breathe out and start over. The good news is, if you're over full, you can always let some out. Breathing is a sustainable act. For the empty breath, we want to find a place before we get to panic. A place before we begin to feel burning sensations or before the alarm bells in our mind start indicating that we need to breathe back in. All right, so with that in mind, let's begin practice. I'm going to verbalize breathe in and breathe out. You can feel free to work with me, pause, continue at any time, work at your own pace, but I'm going to give a few as illustrations. Breathe in, hold for a duration you feel comfortable with, breathe out, hold. Hold for a duration you feel comfortable with. Breathe in. Again, finding that 70 to 80% fullness. Breathe out, finding that 10 to 20% emptiness. Breathe in. Breathe out. That's it. There's no specific goals like extending beyond a certain duration, trying to keep empty as long as possible or full as long as possible. Just enjoy the sensation of expanding your chest and holding, releasing, emptying, and holding, and constantly cycling between the two of them. Feel free to play around, spend your time seeing what is that tolerance limit. This is really inner work. You're looking to find that mindfulness about when your chest is overstretched, about when you're overfull, and what does it feel like to be overfull. Where is the happy place for your chest expansion? And then the same is true of the contraction and the emptying of the breath. At what point do you begin to feel alarm bells indicate that you need to breathe back in? At what point, when you're emptying out, do you begin to get a level of anxiety associated with the emptiness that you're about to encounter in your lungs? So go ahead, play with this, make it your own, really own it. You don't necessarily need to perform this one every single day, but I would recommend, especially if you're uncomfortable with it, to take some time, sit with it, and explore it. All right, if you have any comments, leave them in the comments section, and as always, stay safe.